So if you are going to be the healthy person that God created you to be, then one thing that you are going to have to tackle is your mindset. And the mindset shift that I want to give you today is this: your body is not broken. Now, this is the first in a series of post videos that I'm going to do called Healthy Mindset Shift series. It's a series of videos I'm going to do where I challenge certain mindsets that are common in society, but that are causing us to miss out on being healthy because it's just simply having us in the wrong frame of mind. So anyway, make sure you like and subscribe so you can be tuned in, so you can be notified rather each time I put out one of these posts. Okay. All right, let's get into it. So what I mean when I say your body is not broken, if you really think about it, the way that our society tends to treat the health of the physical body, or I even go a little further and say dysfunction of the physical body, they treat it as if your body is broken, that it can no longer function. So think about this. When you were born, you don't come into the world with anything. Basically, you were just born and, they cut the umbilical cord and you are an autonomous human being. Now, of course, you need somebody, to help feed you, give you water, help you to clean yourself and all those different type of things. But as far as like a being, you don't have any equipment that you necessarily require or anything like that. You are a functioning human being. So you get older, typically your youth is characterized with high energy, vigor, health, all that kind of good stuff. For the most part, kids don't really have to take much of any medications and things like that. Then we characterize, like, once you start to get into the adult years, especially kind of like middle age, kind of 40s, 50s or so, we start to see those years as the years where the body starts to break down. You start to get aches and pains. You start to take blood pressure medication, because things just don't operate the way they used to. Your body just not young and vigorous like it used to be. And so now your body starts to need a little bit of help. And so that's when the pharmaceuticals come in. That's when these various other interventions typically come in. And, typically starting at that age, we consider that the body needs help running. And pretty much the way that we see it is that it's like that from here on out, from that point on. Now, what I contend to you is this, that what we do not consider in that calculation is the fact that, especially if you live in a society like ours, the United States, typically in our country, from the moment you are a child, even a baby, to the point you become an adult and beyond, especially if you grew up, if you're like a millennial like me, Gen X, even baby boomers, you have been indulging, whether you knew it or not, in an unhealthy lifestyle. The food that you ate, or at least a good portion of the food you ate, especially depending on what generation, the more recent generations like mine, Gen X, or even after millennials, so that's what, Gen Z, you have eaten a large portion of your diet has consisted of processed food. Now, keep in mind, this did not characterize the generations, for example, like maybe before baby boomers or even further before that, where they didn't really have this prevalence of fast food, whether it be a fast food restaurant or the junk food that's in the grocery stores or the convenience stores or whatever it is. But typically in our society, you have been eating a pretty large portion of junk food, like fast food, a few days a week, if not a few times a day for a long time period, talking about years, decades even. You went from being active, and again, I'm making a general statement because this may not be true with everybody, but it's true, I think, with most people. You were very active as a child, especially, I'll say, if you were like Gen Z and previous generations, you were probably very active as a child. But then once you got into adult years, as you kind of went through college years or whatever, into adult years, you gradually started to become less active until you weren't active at all. Why? Out of necessity, because you got adult responsibilities, a job that you got to drive to, and you got to go here and there and all this kind of stuff. So you just don't have the time to move. Okay. But we don't consider that. We don't consider the fact that we tend to wear on our shoulders all of the burdens that come with living in the modern day world, from having all the responsibilities we have, dealing with family issues, dealing with illness, dealing with, all of the stuff that we're inundated with from, the news and social media and all this kind of stuff, AKA stress. We're carrying all of that stress. We don't consider the fact that we're not getting enough sleep, so we're supposed to get, somewhere around 7 hours of sleep, but a lot of us are maybe getting sub 6 hours of sleep on a regular basis. My point is this: a lot of what we consider as a broken body, in other words, a body that can no longer function on its own, but it actually needs the help of like other man-made interventions permanently. The reason why we think that is because we've been taught to think that, but we don't consider the many assaults that we put our bodies through on a daily basis for years, from the point that we are like pretty much born through our adulthood. And so think about that. A lot of the dysfunction that we experience, and I'm talking about a lot, high blood pressure, diabetes, certain cancers, certain autoimmune diseases, and the list goes on and on. A lot of the things that we experience are because of the different unhealthy habits and foods and things that we're exposed to for a long period of time. But instead of fixing those things at the root, we assume that the body is broken. And the way I know that is because we just start having to take medications for the rest of our lives and whatnot. Now, understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that medication is a bad thing. I'm not necessarily saying that. However, if we are not recognizing, if we are not recognizing that the body is merely responding to the inputs that it's received, or the lack of inputs that it's received, then we are simply treating our bodies like they're broken, and they're not. Matter of fact, a lot of times, if you really consider the fact that we've been unknowingly assaulting our bodies with all kind of unhealthy foods and habits, when dysfunction starts to show up, it really is probably a sign more so that your body is working the way that it should. Y'all, please hear me. And I'm trying to say this in as clear as a way as I can without just being too verbose. Let me just ask a question. How would your body be if you did everything right by your body? So I consider myself, when I consider what does it mean to do right with your body, by your body, you eat plenty of fruits and vegetables. You're not snacking all the time. You're drinking plenty of water. You're not doing all those sugary drinks. You're getting good sleep every night. You rarely get poor sleep. You're moving constantly through the day. You're maintaining your muscle mass by doing, operating your body, whether it be strength training or at least just kind of just being an autonomous human being and doing physical stuff in your life. You know how to not let stuff bother you. You cast your care, you really cast your cares on God, knowing that He cares for you. You really do these things. What would your body do if you actually really did that. And I suspect that if you really consider that, you would probably agree with me that you would at least feel better than you may feel now, or a person who's dealing with ailments and stuff would feel better than they do now. So one of the things I consider, it's a lot of different examples of this, but like, in today's world, one of the new interventions that's become popular is the GLP-1 inhibitors for weight loss. These drugs are typically used to help people who deal with type 2 diabetes. The drug helps whenever it inhibits GLP-1, it slows down the passage of food through the digestive system, therefore making you feel fuller longer. It also helps to kind of regulate blood sugar in a way. And so therefore those kind of like cause it to help you to lose weight. These drugs can be taken daily or weekly, from what I know, and you inject them or you take them by pill, and they help you to lose weight. They do. But then you have to take them for the rest of your life. So it's like, okay, so is this really solving the issue? My question is your body really broken? Are our bodies broken if we're gaining weight, or is there a cause? In short, I think what's really at play here is a mindset that has been perpetuated by our society, that causes us to miss out on the health that God intends, well, not only for his people, but for mankind. The mindset that our bodies break down as they get older, and this is just something that is an inevitability, and that's not really related to anything but just age and bodies that just break over time, But think about this though, even vehicles will mess up if they aren't maintained well, And so, but also consider this too. With vehicles don't have self-healing mechanisms in them. We do. God built that into us. So the point that I'm making is we have to change the way that we think if it is not matching up with God's truth. If it's not matching up with God's truth, we got to change it. It's not compatible, and it causes us to miss out on what God has actually always intended for us since the beginning of time. So if you believe that your body is broken, then you'll accept as an inevitability that your body over time will deteriorate and, basically decay. And then you'll just start to, become decrepit and all that kind of stuff, sickly and all those types of things. Now, some may say, Sean, well, you're just kind of being naive about, aging and whatnot. And I'll contend that, no, I'm not. The body does change with age, but much of what we have assumed is aging is not aging. It is poor maintenance of the human body. Okay. That's why I'm doing this whole series on healthy mindset shift. And that's all based on Romans 12:2, one of the most commonly quoted, memorized scriptures in the church, which is, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you might prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. In other words, that you might be able to discern what that good and perfect will of God is. Okay. And that's what I'm dedicated toward, because if you can get it here, then it's going to happen everywhere else. But if you are thinking in a wrong way about your health and what you can expect in your physical body, in your physical health here on this side, then you're not going to be experienced beyond whatever you believe. As thou hast believed, so be it done unto you. So let me know what you think about what I've talked about here, about busting this myth that the body is broken. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I do appreciate you watching.